She was planted there from day one. Everything she did, every smile, every late night at the office, it was all calculated. Women like her don't fall in love. They fall into position. Naomi Holloway read it on her phone in the elevator of the building where she had worked for 3 years. The doors opened on the 14th floor. She walked to her desk, sat down, opened her laptop, and started typing the most important document she had written in 3 years. Her resignation letter. She didn't cry. She had learned a long time ago that crying in places where people had already decided who you were was a waste of perfectly good tears. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you emotional stories that stay with you. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any story. And if you're returning, thank you. Your support means everything. Now, stay until the end, drop a comment with your thoughts, and let's begin. 3 years before that elevator ride, Naomi sat in a beige office and listened to her supervisor explain the assignment. Pierce Ventures is a tech company based in Chicago. The internal ledgers have irregularities we can't explain from the outside. Someone in there is moving money and we need someone inside to find out who. And the CEO? She asked. Her supervisor slid a photo across the table. Callum Pierce, 34. Built the company from a 2-person startup. Current valuation north of $2 billion. Someone inside that building is cooking books and we need to know if it goes all the way to the top. Naomi picked up the photo. He was handsome in the uncomplicated way that powerful men sometimes were, like the world had agreed to arrange itself conveniently for his face. Strong jaw, focused eyes, the kind of posture that came not from a gym but from a man who had never once doubted he belonged in any room he entered. She put the photo down. When do I start? She started on a Monday. The office was on the 14th floor of a high-rise in the West Loop, all glass walls and clean lines. She wore her hair pulled back, a fitted black blazer, her most professional face. She did not meet Callum Pierce until 11:30, when he walked out of a conference room and nearly collided with her. He stopped, looked at her. Something crossed his face that she filed away without examining. "You must be the contractor," he said. "Naomi Holloway." She extended her hand. "I reviewed your scheduling system this morning. You have a conflict on Thursday between your 2 o'clock and your 3:15. I've already moved the 3:15 to Friday and notified both parties." He looked at her one beat longer than necessary. "I've had that conflict for 6 weeks." "I know." Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. "Callum Pierce." "I know that too," she said and walked past him toward her desk. She told herself on the drive home that it meant nothing. He was the subject. She was the investigator. She opened the company's financial files on her secure laptop and started working. By the end of her second week, she had found 3 things. The first was that Callum Pierce ran his company obsessively, personally, with a specific intensity that most people around him had learned to either match or get out of the way of. She had no problem with that. She had been that way herself since she was 9, sitting at her mama's kitchen table on the south side working through math problems while the smell of Miss Evelyn's fried chicken filled the whole first floor and her brother Darius argued with the television in the next room. The second thing she found was that the irregularities traced consistently back to the CFO's office. A man named Gerald Spence, 41 years old, 4 years with the company, and a secondary account that received deposits on a 60-day cycle that matched no vendor, contractor, or legitimate business expense she could find. The third thing she found was that it had nothing to do with Callum Pierce. She cross-referenced it 6 different ways. His name was nowhere near it. Not once. Not even adjacently. She submitted a sealed report confirming the CEO had no knowledge of or involvement in the fraudulent activity and expected to be pulled from the assignment within the week. Her supervisor called the next morning. "We need you to stay through the secondary phase. You have the access and the relationships. It makes more sense to keep you in place." Naomi said okay. She told herself it was purely professional. These were true things. They were not the only true things, but she did not write the other ones in any report. By her second month she had stopped thinking of it as an assignment. She still did the work. But somewhere in the space between the work and the hours that sat around the work, Callum Pierce had become something other than a subject. It happened in pieces, the way things did when you were paying attention to something else. It happened the morning she came in early and found him already there at the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, and his expression when he turned and saw her was not the expression of a man surprised to see his assistant. It was the expression of a man who was relieved. It happened the afternoon he came back from a bad meeting and sat in the chair across from her desk and said, "Tell me something that has nothing to do with work," and she said, "My Aunt Gloria makes the best sweet potato pie in the state of Illinois, and she knows it, and she will not share the recipe with a living soul, and we have all accepted this." And he laughed. Not a polished laugh. A real one, sudden and warm, like it had gotten out before he could decide whether to let it. She started keeping a personal notebook. Not for the firm. Just for herself. He remembers things people tell him. Small things. I mentioned once that I don't drink orange juice, and he has never once ordered it for a shared breakfast meeting. I don't think he knows that I noticed. He is harder on himself than on anyone who works for him. Most men in his position stopped questioning themselves a long time ago. He hasn't. I don't know what to do with any of this, and I am aware that is not a sentence I should be writing, but I am running out of places to put it. The secondary investigation wrapped in late autumn. Her firm had everything they needed. Her work was done. She should have told her supervisor she was ready to transition out. Instead, she sat at her desk on Monday morning and answered Callum's emails and said nothing to anyone. 6 more months passed. In those months, the thing between them that had never been named grew quietly, in the edges of ordinary moments. He started taking the long route past her desk every morning. She started leaving a light on at her desk after hours because she noticed he worked later when the floor felt less empty. They had dinner once, and sat across from each other for 3 hours talking about everything except the one thing sitting in the middle of the table like a centerpiece neither of them had ordered. On the walk back his hand brushed hers once and neither of them moved away and neither of them said anything about it. She called her brother Darius that night. "You sound like you did something," he said, because Darius had known her 34 years and could read her voice the way Miss Evelyn read scripture, thoroughly and without mercy. "I'm in a situation," she said. "With the job." "With the job," she said, which was true and also not the whole truth. She hung up, opened her notebook to a blank page and wrote, "I cleared him 14 months ago. He never knew I was there to investigate him. And I stayed. I told myself it was the work, but it was not the work, and I have known that for a long time. Whatever happens next, he deserves the truth. And I am afraid of what he will do when I tell him." She closed the notebook, turned off the light. 3 weeks later, someone leaked her original assignment to a media contact. By 7 in the morning, the story was everywhere. Billionaire CEO Callum Pierce's executive assistant revealed to be financial investigator placed inside his company. Sources suggest close personal relationship developed during undercover assignment. The comments section filled within the hour. Gold digger with a law degree. She played him perfectly. She was never his assistant. She was his mark and she flipped the script. 40,000 likes. 60,000. The number kept moving. Naomi read it in the elevator. Rode up to the 14th floor. Sat down at her desk. And started typing her resignation letter. If you're feeling this story, hype it so others can find it. Comment where you're watching from. Now back to the story. The resignation letter took 11 minutes. She kept it short, professional, cited personal reasons, gave 2 weeks' notice. She printed it, folded it, wrote his name on the front in her clean, even handwriting, and slid it under his door. Then she walked back to her desk and kept working because that was what she did. Miss Evelyn had raised her that way, in their house on the south side where feelings were not a reason to stop moving. You felt things on your own time. On everyone else's time you worked. Callum arrived at 8:47. She heard his footsteps stop outside his door. A pause. The door opened and closed. Silence for 6 minutes. Then his door opened again. She did not look up. Naomi. His voice was not what she expected. Not cold. Not clipped. Something she didn't have a category for. She looked up. He was standing in his doorway holding the folded letter, jacket off, collar open, looking like a man who had just read something and was still deciding what it meant. "Come in," he said. "I think the letter is pretty clear." "Come in, Naomi." She walked into his office. He closed the door and stood still in the middle of the room, which was unusual. Callum Pierce was always in motion. Standing still was not something she associated with him. "How long have you known?" he asked. She had prepared for several versions of this conversation. Not this one. "I cleared you 14 months into the assignment," she said. The irregularities traced back to Gerald Spence. His secondary account, his routing, his approval chains. Your name wasn't in any of it. I submitted a sealed report confirming you had no knowledge or involvement. The room was very quiet. 14 months, he said. You've been here 3 years. I stayed on as a legitimate employee. My contract with the firm ended. I was offered a permanent position and I accepted it. Why? No anger in the word. No accusation. Just a man asking directly the way he asked everything. The answer was in her notebook at home. It had been there for months. But standing here with the gray city behind him and the letter in his hand, it felt too large and too honest for the space between them. I was good at the job, she said. He nodded slowly, like he was filing it away without fully believing it. His desk phone lit up. Then her phone outside. Then his phone again. That's probably your board, she said. I know who it is. After you tell me you're not going to disappear before I get out of that call. She studied him. The letter was still in his hand. He hadn't put it down once. I have nowhere to be, she said finally. Something moved through his expression. Not relief exactly. Something quieter. Like a man who had been holding his breath and decided to let it out slowly rather than all at once. He went to his desk and picked up the phone. She walked back to her desk and stared at her screen without seeing it. Her phone was full of notifications. A text from Darius that said, "Only call me." A voicemail from her mother she could not listen to right now. She put her phone face down. The morning moved around her the way mornings did when something large was happening and the world hadn't caught up yet. Ordinary. Completely ordinary. She pulled up the internal communications archive out of 3 years of habit. She wasn't looking for anything specific. She was just a person who, when unsettled, went back to the numbers because they were the one thing that had never lied to her. She found something she hadn't looked for. A flagged email chain between Gerald Spence and an external address she didn't recognize, dated well after Spence had been handed to the authorities. The external address belonged to a media consultant. 3 emails. The last one, sent from Spence's personal account after his termination, contained one line. When the time is right, the staffing firm records will speak for themselves. Patience. The tightness in her chest shifted into something colder and more specific. Spence had been waiting. He had known about her original placement before he was terminated. Someone at her firm had talked. He had held onto it like a card saved for the moment it would do the most damage. Not to Pierce Ventures. The company was past him. To Callum. Personally. She printed the chain, folded it, set it under her coffee mug. Then opened a fresh document and started writing everything she knew. Clean, specific, sourced, undeniable. If Callum was walking into whatever was downstairs, he was not walking into it without the full picture. She understood sitting there that this was the most honest thing she had done in this building in 3 years. Not the investigation. Not the reports. This. Writing the truth for a man who deserved it not because any contract required it but because she chose to. That distinction mattered more than she had words for. Callum's door opened 40 minutes later. Jacket on, expression arranged into the professional neutral face he wore when a situation required him to be larger than whatever he was currently feeling. "There's a journalist in the lobby. PR wants a brief statement." He paused. "You don't have to come." "I know," she said. She picked up the printed pages and stood. He looked at the papers in her hand. "Spence arranged the leak," she said. "He used an external media consultant with board connections to a private equity firm he joined after leaving here. I can't tie the last piece tight enough yet, but the thread is there and it won't take long to confirm." She held the pages out. "I thought you should have this before you walked into whatever is downstairs." He took the papers, looked at them, looked at her. "You found this morning," he said. "Yes. While you were still planning to resign." She didn't answer. He didn't need her to. He folded the pages into his jacket pocket, something moving through his expression slow and certain, like a man arriving at a conclusion he had been walking toward longer than he had admitted to himself. "Come downstairs," he said. Not an order, not a request. Something in between, the way things between them had always lived, in the edges of ordinary moments, accumulating without announcement. She smoothed her emerald green dress and walked with him to the elevator. The lobby was not what PR had promised. It had acquired in 45 minutes the charged atmosphere of a place where people sensed something significant was about to happen. 30 people visible. 2 security staff. A journalist from a local business publication near the entrance with a recorder in her hand and a photographer beside her. 4 board members near the reception desk standing the way people stood when they were waiting to exert influence. One of them, a silver-haired man named Patterson, moved forward immediately. "Callum, PR wants you by the east entrance. Brief statement, no questions, then back upstairs." He barely looked at Naomi. It would probably be better if Ms. Holloway waited upstairs. "Why?" Callum asked. "Given the current narrative, her visibility in this moment." "The current narrative is inaccurate," Callum said, voice very even. "So her visibility is not something I'm concerned about." Patterson looked at him, then at Naomi, then back at Callum. "The board's position is that until we have a clearer picture of Ms. Holloway's original." "I have a clearer picture." Callum reached into his jacket and held up the folded pages. "Gerald Spence arranged the leak through an external consultant with direct board connections to the private equity firm he joined after his termination. My team will have full confirmation before end of day. The board's position can update accordingly." Patterson went quiet. The lobby had gone the particular kind of still that happened when people pretending not to pay attention were paying complete attention. Naomi's chest was tight. She could feel all of it around her, the marble, the warm golden light of the wall fixtures, the city blurred through the floor-to-ceiling glass, 30 people's attention settling over everything. She thought about the resignation letter still open in a tab upstairs. She thought about the notebook in her desk drawer at home and everything she had written in it that she had never said out loud. Callum turned to her. Not to the journalist, not to Patterson, not to the room. To her. His hand came to the small of her back, firm and unhesitating, his body angling toward her in a way that said to anyone paying attention that whatever came next, she was not standing in it alone. "You submitted a report clearing me 14 months in," he said. Not quietly. For the lobby, for the recorder, for every person in that marble space pretending to look somewhere else. Before anyone asked you to. Before it was required. Before there was any consequence to what you chose to write in that document. You found a fraud that had nothing to do with your assignment, documented it completely, and cleared my name in a sealed report you had every reason to believe I would never read. He paused. And then you stayed. The lobby was completely silent. Not because the job required it. Not because of any contract. You stayed because you chose to. And you worked harder for this company in the year and a half after that report than anyone I have employed since I started this business." His jaw was tight. His eyes were on her face and nowhere else. She is not waiting upstairs. And the narrative that she was here for any reason other than the one that is now documented and verifiable is not a narrative I will allow to stand in my building or anywhere else. Naomi's throat was tight. The world felt immediate and quiet at the same time, the way it did in moments happening too fast to fully absorb while they were happening. Her hand came up before she decided to move it, rested lightly on his chest, fingers barely touching the lapel of his jacket, steadying herself the way you reached for something solid when the ground shifted. "You read my notes," she said, low enough that it was just for him. "Every word," he said, equally low, "including the ones that had nothing to do with numbers." And his hand at her back pressed slightly closer. "Not much. Enough. I've been here the whole time too," he said. "I just didn't have a notebook." The photographer's camera made a sound behind them. She already knew without seeing it what that picture looked like. "The letter," she said, "is not happening. Callum." Naomi. Just her name. Steady and certain the way he said the things he had already decided. "It is not happening." She looked at him for a long moment. The lobby still silent around them. The marble and the golden light and the city through the glass all witness to whatever this was, whatever they were turning toward together in this public space that felt, despite everything, like the most private moment of her life. "Okay," she said quietly. Something released in his expression. He looked at her the way he had looked at her on her very first day in this building when she shook his hand and told him she already knew his name. Like a man encountering something he had not accounted for and had decided, without needing time to think about it, that he was glad. "Let's go back upstairs," he said. "You still have a statement to make." "I just made it." She almost smiled. The almost was enough. They walked to the elevator together, his hand still at the small of her back, the lobby parting around them the way spaces did when two people were moving through them with the quiet certainty of people who had decided something important and were no longer pretending it wasn't true. The doors closed. 14 floors of clean, deliberate silence. The building shuddered slightly between the third and fourth floors the way it sometimes did, and this time his hand didn't move from her back at all. She didn't say anything about it. Neither did he. The doors opened on 14. She walked to her desk, found the resignation letter still in its tab, the cursor blinking like a question. She closed the tab. Outside, Chicago was still flat and gray and wide, but the grayness had changed quality somehow, the way light did when you hadn't noticed the day moving and then suddenly you did, and everything looked slightly different than it had that morning, not because anything had changed but because you were seeing it from a different place than where you started. 3 minutes later his door opened. She heard his footsteps and without looking up reached for her coffee, found it cold, stood to make a fresh one. "Naomi," he said from his doorway. She stopped. "Thank you," he said. Quiet and direct, without the architecture people usually built around the things that mattered most to them. She looked at him over her shoulder. For which part? He considered this the way he considered everything. "All of it," he said. "Starting from the beginning." She nodded once, the way she acknowledged things she didn't yet have full language for, and carried the cold coffee to the break room to make something better. Behind her she heard him pick up the phone and begin, in the calm certain voice of a man who knew exactly what he was doing and why, to take apart the story that had tried to take apart something he had decided he was no longer willing to let anyone touch. 6 weeks later Gerald Spence's media consultant was named in a civil filing. The story rewrote itself the way Callum said it would, by morning, then by the week, then permanently. Aunt Gloria called Naomi on a Sunday after church, sweet potato pie cooling on her counter, gospel still playing in the background, and said in the voice she used when she already knew everything and was only calling to make you say it out loud. "So, tell me about this man." Naomi sat on her couch, Chicago quiet outside her window, and for the first time in a very long time did not reach for the professional version of the answer. She told her aunt the truth. All of it. From the beginning. Aunt Gloria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Baby, I'm going to need you to bring him to Sunday dinner. And tell him he better come hungry." Naomi laughed. A real one, sudden and warm, like it had gotten out before she could decide whether to let it. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "What would you rate this story? Drop 0 to 10 in the comments right now. If this story moved you, hit subscribe for more emotional journeys every day. And if it truly touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Every contribution, big or small, means the world. Ready for the next story? It is even more dramatic than this one. Click now. Thank you for being part of this journey.